I don't think people quite realize how much these major social media platforms have figured out that short form video sells. We're actually seeing this sort of global rise in short form drama apps now. And I don't know if you guys have seen these apps, but it basically takes a movie that used to be 2 hours long and it breaks it down into, say, 60 different parts. And a colleague of mine at my company was showing me the other day, in different parts of the world, they're exploding. There's been a 190% increase in short form drama apps. Takes a long form movie, turns it into short form videos. Disney Plus plans to introduce AI generated short form videos this year, starting with 30-second limits inside the Disney Plus app. And TechCrunch also reported that as of October 2025, Netflix tested short-form video content on phones and recently announced its plan to expand this feature. It appears that all of the content we consume is going that way. And listen, I'm friends with lots of people at big social media platforms. This doesn't stand in my way of criticizing them, because I think two things can be true at the same time, right? So I think it can be true that I have a podcast and I make short-form videos, and that I also understand that there's a real downside to them. And all of the major social media platforms that I speak to have a huge drive towards short-form video. It appears to be their number one strategic priority. And obviously, because of the success of TikTok, as of January 2026, TikTok, I believe, is the most downloaded social app in the world now. And if I'm running a social media company and my one focus is profit, I'm now faced with an existential crisis. Yeah. I either take part in this thing that is driving the highest retention, therefore the best ad payouts, or I die.
So there's two comments to that. First off is that, when we think about social media and how society is shape-shifting to allow this short-form content, there is a concept that Jonathan and I briefly mentioned, I think prior to us filming, called second screen viewing. And so what's happening is that allegedly, these big streamers are asking their creative talent, whether it's screenwriters or actors or directors, to replay, to reiterate the plot. Because as you're watching, when we were kids, we would watch TV or movies and you just sit on the couch and you'd have a bucket of popcorn with your family and you'd watch a movie, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And now second screen viewing is happening, which means that you're watching a movie or a TV show, and you're on your device. And so you are constantly having that fragmented attention, and we are all doing it. And so what these streamers are allegedly asking their creative talent to do is to reiterate the plot. So it's shape-shifting.
It makes sense. If my brain is, I'm 33 years old, so I've grown up with a lot of this stuff. If my brain has been wired to have shorter attention spans, and movies from 30 years ago are not going to cut it for me.
Right, but then look what happens if everybody chases that. And I know, look, Netflix is making shorter and shorter stuff. Even the TED conference, TED Talks are getting shorter and shorter. What does that do? It just repeats the cycle. Now, I appreciate that you're in a collective action trap, as you put it. If I don't do it and everyone else is, then I lose out. And so the business pressure on all the creators, the business pressures go shorter, shorter, shorter. There's a very useful psychological distinction here that I think would be helpful, which is the difference between psychological assimilation and accommodation. This goes back to Jean Piaget, the great developmental psychologist. We have certain mental structures. We have a model in our head of how things work. And, then you learn something new. Then, kid learns, that's an aardvark. Okay, I put that into, that's just, you just assimilate. They learn lots of animal names. And then they learn something that's doesn't fit, like you learn about bacteria. And now you have to, now you have to change your mental structure. It takes a little time. You change your mental structure to understand more about life. That's what education really is all about. You have to have a lot of assimilation, of course, but you need that accommodation over and over again. That's why you want to go to college. That's why you want to read novels. That's what a great movie does. It takes time. And so one of the great things about this modern technology is that we can do things like have this 3-hour conversation. I can't believe it. People are going to listen to it. So this, long form content, this is all about accommodation. Anybody who walks out, who leaves this conversation after 3 hours and isn't thinking about something differently, we failed. Okay, so you are very much in the accommodation business. That's great. And then the question, both a moral and a strategic question, is how much do you need to play the quick hit game in order to get people there? I leave that to you to do the moral calculation. Maybe it balances out. But I think that's where you are.
Would you advise people to delete these short form videos?
Oh my God, yes, of course. Yes, that would the most important thing you can do for your intelligence and for humanity would be delete them. So what I advise my students to do is, I say, just do this. Just delete one of the social media apps that you use, especially if it's TikTok. Just delete it from your phone. You can still check on your computer. If someone sends you a video, you can still watch it on your computer. You can even check it, every weekend. You can spend some time on it. But just get it off your phone. Because on the phone is always with us. It's an extension of our body. And if it's always there, then it's going to take it's called attention fracking. It's going to break up your attention. It's going to take every 7 seconds that you're not doing something, you're going to go for the phone. So the best thing you can do to make yourself smarter and a better partner and a better human, I would say, would be to delete especially any of the short form videos, so TikTok. Unfortunately, YouTube, which has a lot of good stuff on it, becomes YouTube Shorts. Instagram, which does a lot of terrible things, but people do find it useful for all kinds of purposes, becomes Instagram Reels. So I think the proper amount of short form video for children 0 to 18 is 0. They should never be watching the vertical videos. Parents, don't ever let your kids watch the short vertical videos. You might even, if only there was a way to put it, is there a way to put a time limit where you can say it has to be 10 minutes or longer? Kids, you can have an hour of YouTube, but it has to be 10 minutes or longer, nothing shorter than 10 minutes. That at least will get rid of the quick swiping, the dopamine stuff.
So I would say that for kids, yes, not engaging it whatsoever. But for someone, my approach is a little bit different for someone who's in their 30s or in their 40s. And the way I would kind of frame that is, instead of renouncing, saying I'm going to get it off my device and I'm going to check on a desktop, which is great, there's little kind of tweaks that we could do, because my approach is to foster that sense of empowerment in someone to help them make positive change. And so one strategy that you could use, if you are saying, there's no way I'm getting rid of I'm not deleting these apps from my phone, right? By the way, I practice what I preach, and I really don't engage in technology as to the best of my ability. But one thing that you could do is grayscale your phone. And so especially at night, it's 9 p.m., like we talked about revenge bedtime procrastination, you know that you're going to do it. You're going to sit down and you're going to scroll, and before you know it, it's 2 a.m. Instead, grayscale your phone. This simple switch, you can toggle it. I have my phone set to grayscale, which simply means that you're getting rid of your color, making it black and white. And so when it is grayscaled, then it doesn't have that same addictive quality to it. It's like going through a grocery store. A marketing executive described it this way to me. Going through a grocery store, instead of the Technicolor junk food cereal, it's just black and white. So you have there's a greater sense of compulsion to continue checking. So that's one strategy you could use. And the other is to set some boundaries. So geographical boundaries, keep your phone out of your arm's reach. If you're at a desk, if you're a student, not right next to you, because we know there's this phenomenon of brain drain. So it's not just that when you're using your phone, it can have a potential for distraction, but also just having it close by. It's called brain drain. And so putting it in a desk drawer, keeping it in another part of the home if you are working, keeping it far away from you. And so you kind of can override that primal urge to scroll, let your prefrontal cortex take hold again. And so there's all these small tweaks that you can do. You think no?
Yes, there are all these small tweaks you can do, and they will make the heroin a little bit less addictive. And yeah, you should try those. But what I can say after teaching this course for many years is that people who try that, they report, it helped. It helped. But you only really get the transformation when you quit social media. That you get your life back, you get hours a day back. So, I would urge everyone to just think, you only get one childhood, you only get one young adulthood. And if you're going to spend it scrolling, what do you have to show for it at the end? And when you get people to reflect on, well, how much value do you really get from watching the short videos? How would your life be different if you knocked it out? Once they realize that their motives for being on it were either just to keep up or because that's what everyone else is doing, or as you said, I deserve it because I'm tired. Well, why are you tired? It's in part because your attention was fragmented all day long. So you only really get the transformations when you get a real change in what you're consuming. Although, of course, yes, setting it to grace will be helpful, but it's not going to be transformative for most people, I believe.
And then, based on the science, there's certain elements, like when we think about what is it about the phone that is creating that sense of compulsion. Jonathan is right. So what is it about the phone? It's not just the phone, you're scrolling, you're engaging. There are two studies that were really interesting. One, people got off of, they continued to use their devices. They had no internet. So it's like,
Yeah.
I tried
this
this
is a good one.
experiment myself in December. I was out of the country. And so I just let I didn't plug into Wi-Fi. And I found, a marked change in my mood, my sleep. And I'm not even, 20 years old on TikTok. And it was so different. And so the study found that just 2 weeks of continuing to use your device, but just not having internet access, improved your attention, well-being, and mental health. And in this population, it was all adults. It wasn't
Right, it was young
kids.
adults,
It
yeah.
was all adults. Found that 91% of people had an improvement in at least one of these metrics. And then another study more recently, just 1 week of not engaging in social media, a digital detox they called it, did the same thing. Better, less anxiety, less depression, decreased insomnia. But my feeling is that, there is this new kind of meme, right? Like the millennial urge to delete my internet presence and live off the grid. There is certainly utility to that. And I salute anyone who wants to engage in that analog life more and more. But from where I sit, I feel like we do need to have healthier boundaries and engage more responsibly. It also builds up that muscle, and it can help, it takes 8 weeks to do. Neuroplasticity, when you're building new brain circuits, it takes 8 weeks. Falling off, getting back up is part of habit formation. So if you're going to make any of these changes, understand that it takes some time. But I don't know if it is possible for me or for others to say fully, I'm going to, delete off of my phone. But I love that.
Okay. So I'd like to go a little further with this. So the way you put it, yes, there's all these things that we could do. We should have boundaries, but all of that puts the responsibility on us.
Agreed.
And that's where we are with junk food. With junk food, we're like, okay, it's out there. We have to learn self-control. We have to teach self-control to our kids. Okay, that's the way it is in this country. But the digital devices, I think, are very, very different. So imagine if we sent our kids out into the world and it wasn't just that there was junk food in all the stores. It was that everything was made of junk food. Door handles, you can eat it, it's chocolate. But it's not just that the world's made of junk food. They actually can tell, they're able to tell what you're craving at the moment. And maybe you're more in the mood for salt. So now it's all potato chips or pretzels. If the world is designed by companies to always give you the thing that will most grab your unconscious desires, will affect the amygdala, the reward centers, that's on them. That's not our fault. My general rule as a social psychologist is if a few people are doing something bad or self-destructive, well, they should learn some self-control, or that's something about them. But when 90 or 95% of people are doing something self-destructive, that's because of the companies that put us in an environment that encourages addiction. So I just want to read a quote. We have so much good stuff coming out from Meta, from all the whistleblowers. Now all the court cases are beginning in Los Angeles. Finally, for the first time, Meta's going to face a jury with all the parents who've lost kids. So here's a chat. So we have a lot of internal documents that came out from the attorneys general that are suing Meta. So while they're talking about the results of some of their internal research, one of them says, oh my gosh, y'all, Instagram is a drug. We're basically pushers. We're causing reward deficit disorder because people are binging on Instagram so much they can't feel reward anymore, which is something Anna Lemke said. Like the reward tolerance is so high. And then he says, I know Adam, meaning Adam Mosseri, I know Adam doesn't want to hear it. He freaked out when I talked about dopamine in my Teen Fundamentals Leads review. But it is undeniable, it's biological and psychological, top-down directives drive it all towards making sure people keep coming back for more. This is not on us. They designed it to be addictive. They've done research to make it maximally addictive. They push it on children. They tried to get Instagram kids for even littler kids. They know what they're doing. They've done the research. My team, we found references to 31 internal studies that Meta did. They've done a lot of research finding harm. They bury it, but you can find it at metasinternalresearch.org. We put it all online. You can read these quotes. So yes, we should exert more self-control, but basically we're being pushed addictive substances, addictive apps, and it's messing us all up.
I agree wholeheartedly that it is so destructive. And you feel like even with people in their 40s and 50s, and if anyone can do it, it's you, Jonathan. Seriously, I would love to see it. We also know based on the data that these things they reshape our brain, rewire our brain through neuroplasticity, and also change our brain waves. So patterns. So we talked about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, right? But they also change brain waves. And so when you look at studies and the data, it has the reward pathway and dopamine. And these brain patterns, the brain waves, mimic addictive behaviors. And, that there's certain features, right? Like when you do swipe down to refresh, it's the slot machine.
It was modeled directly after the slot machine. Yeah.
Or autoplay, or, the algorithm, that infinite scroll. One really interesting kind of like breaking news, which you guys may have already heard of, it's like 3 days ago, the European Union Commission found TikTok to be in breach of the Digital Services Act. And what it said was that it is addictive. It, creates compulsion and gets people into this autopilot mode. So they have difficulty disengaging. And personally, I am moving away from social media and really leaning into analog life. But I think with the way the world, it's one of our only ways to connect, right? Meaning, I don't mean connect deeply.
It's become one of our only ways.
I don't mean connect like in a deep way.
That's right.
But be informed to know what's going on in the world, etc.
I suspect that because we've spent so long criticizing Meta over the last 10 years, because the biggest in any category takes all the heat. So OpenAI is taking it now. And what this often does is it provides cover for other people to be even more extreme with that behavior while like Meta take the heat. And I actually think this is how TikTok came to be. TikTok had they originally started as Musical.ly, became TikTok. They were taking no heat. So they created an algorithm which is the equivalent of like crack cocaine. The reason why I have a TikTok account, I don't have the app on my phone. I have never had the app on my phone. I don't was because I noticed that the view variance on TikTok was like no other platform. What I mean by that is you can have 1 million followers on TikTok and you can get 10,000 views, or you can get 10 million views. In the 15 years that I've been on social media, building social media businesses, I'd never seen this before. And what it indicated to me is that the algorithm was being an even more aggressive sorting hat or retention machine.
What to push up, what to push down.
Yeah. And so like when I started in social media in 2014, if I had 1 million followers, I might get 1 million views or maybe 800,000. I did some research the other day on all of our social channels over time. And what we're seeing is the variance in the amount of views we can get is increasing, which means the algorithm is doing more work to say, show everyone this. I don't care if the person that posted it is called Jenny and has 7 followers, and show no one this. I don't care if it's Stephen who has 1 million followers or whatever. And I've realized that TikTok was way ahead of everybody here. And that's why they are the most addictive, the fastest growing platform. I say all this to say that even if Meta shut down tomorrow, someone else would seize the opportunity if there isn't sort of policy, I guess, in place.
That's right.
That would just be whack-a-mole, right?
Yeah. No, that's right. And so, in terms of who's done the damage to kids, Meta is the big fish via Instagram. And they're also the main player in terms of spending a huge amount of money to lobby Congress and block laws. They're also the main player in buying up civil society organizations, giving money to organizations, the National PTA, all sorts of organizations. They get to then give a message on digital citizenship or digital health. So Meta really is the major driver. Meta is the tobacco industry here, trying to change the dialogue. But in terms of the products, Snapchat is probably more deadly in terms of the actual number of deaths per user, because Snapchat it's not making you depressed by social comparison as much. Snapchat is introducing you to all kinds of people, and it's the main way that drug dealers and sextortionists find kids. Snapchat has a quick ad feature, which relentlessly pushes you to connect with friends of friends. So once a man can get any kid in a school, now he can get connected to all the kids in the school. So in a lot of the court cases, when you have suicides from cyberbullying, you have drug overdoses from, a kid bought a Xanax, but it had fentanyl in it. So Snapchat in 2022, we know from their internal documents from the lawsuits, they were getting 10,000 reports of sextortion from their users, not a year, every month. And that's just what was reported, which is the tip of the iceberg. So Snapchat is a terrible platform for children to be on. It should be an adult-only platform. You're talking with strangers around the world, and with disappearing messages, and Snapchat doesn't even keep a record. It is ideal for sextortion. There's even a handbook, how to sextort kids on Snapchat. It goes around the world, and criminal organizations use it. So I definitely don't want to let Snapchat off. TikTok, of course, is a Chinese company. Nominally, we'll see if that's changed, but it was a Chinese company that gave its Chinese kids got healthy TikTok or Douyin. They learned to follow astronauts. What? And they gave us their algorithm feeds their kid patriotic stuff. It shuts off at a certain time at night. There's all kinds of limits. So the people who make the technology generally want to protect their own kids, and they want other kids to use it. That's what TikTok is doing in China. They want American kids to rot in hell, but they want their kids to grow up with the ability to focus. And it's the same thing with the tech guys in Silicon Valley. They don't let their kids use this stuff. They make their nannies sign contracts that they will not let the kid have a phone. They will not expose the kid to that. They send their kids to schools like the Waldorf school precisely because there are no computers or tech in the classroom. So once again, we see their revealed behavior. They know they designed it to be addictive. They know it's addictive. They don't let their kids use it. They want your kids to use it. So I think that's where we are.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.